interpreting the Word, which is instead going to be a time of sharing the Word. So how many of you brought a quilt today? Yeah, okay, we have quite a few quilts. How many of you have like a quilt just in your home or in your family, like a quilt, a crocheted blanket, there's so many, yeah. We all have some access to heirlooms. So what I'm going to invite you to do, and I'll model this first, is if you brought a quilt, even if you didn't, if you would like to share a story of that important heirloom and how it connects you to family or friends. So if you brought one, share a story behind it, how it binds you to past and present family, friends, or a church. And if you didn't, just share a story. And I'm going to start. Pastor Pat said he would help me. Right? So you all know that I turned 40 on St. Patrick's Day. Some of you know I turned 40. I guess we're holding it the wrong way. We got this. Come on. Third time's a charm. And this is a quilt that was made for me for my first birthday. Right, Mom? Second birthday, that is made up of squares from all kinds of family and friends, some of whom are still living and some who have passed. So I have my grandparents on here, my godparents are on here, some of our lifelong military family are on here. And what this quilt reminds me of is, even though it's been 38 years since I was given this as a gift, and at 2 years old I probably didn't quite understand the gift, that these are all people who in some way or another have been formative in my life. I'm still in some form of relationship with them or are connected through the past with them. And when I look at this quilt on my birthday, and I usually pull it out on my birthday, sometimes I hang it up and look at it, it reminds me that even as the years go by, there are so many people that I could add to this quilt. Friends and family and church members who support me, love me, and celebrate my life with me. And so this quilt symbolizes that for me as I'm turning 40. Pretty cute, huh? Yeah. All right. Good job, Pat. Now, I've pre-asked a couple of folks to share because I always want to make sure we at least have some folks who want to share. And I asked Sarah Lynn to go next because it is Sarah Lynn's grandmother's quilt that is on our altar today.
Yeah, so this is Grandmother Gregory's quilt that she was born in 1898, and she made this for her wedding. The Sleeth family is resting against the quilt that she made for our wedding, her very last quilt that she made. I don't know what this is called, but it's stained, it's kind of frayed, and I learned from Gail as we were setting this whole thing up, there are two kinds of quilts, because I was like spreading them out and putting stuff on them, and Gail's going, "What are you doing? Don't put anything on that quilt." I was like, "Why not?" I've been tickled on this quilt, and I've cried in this quilt, and I've wrapped up in this quilt. And she's, "Oh." And there are quilts that you don't do that with. There are quilts, Patty's going, "Yeah." It's like, but yes, I know. It's like, okay, well, this is a quilt we can do things with, and it was a used quilt. Anyway, so this Geneva Sears Gregory, my grandmother, but we're going to call her Jinsey, made this one, and her mom was, let's see if I get her name, Dicey Cordelia Sears, but we're going to call her Dealey, right? So we have Jinsey and Dealey, and they both married really, really tall gentlemen, and they were both really, really small women. So they lived.
She's married to the liturgist.
Okay, so this story, and a lot of you have heard this story 100 times, because this story goes around in my family. Dealey was married to Alonzo Tully Sears. We're going to call him Tully. And Tully was a really tall man with red hair, and he was a sheriff on horseback in Pulaski County, Kentucky. And he also ran the general store, and who knows what else he did, but he was the sheriff of the county. And Dealey evidently was quite a little firecracker, and they lived in a house with a gate in the front and the back door, and the visitors always came to the back door, right? That's how it worked. one day there was a knock at the back door, and great-grandfather Dolly saw that it was a hobo, which was common in that time for people to come to the back door to ask for a meal or a bed. And he said, "No, Bailey, do not answer that door. I do not know that man." And she looks up at Dolly and says, "Dolly, that could be Jesus out there at that door." So I am sure that man got a good meal and probably a bed. And the tradition that those women gave me, besides marrying tall men, of love and of service, I see passed on through our generation. So I'm really grateful to those women.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful story. I'm going to call on Laverl McCandless next, and I'm going to ask if Catherine and Deb would be willing, you're leaning against the crochet bedspread that Laverl is going to share about. You can lift that up. And I understand this is very old.
Yes, my grandmother would crochet and knit, and she taught me these things, so I carry on the knitting part. This coverlet, if you want to call it, it's actually a bedspread. She would sit anytime that she could, but she had something going, and I can remember her as a child. I was raised by my grandparents. As a child, her sitting in front of the radio, listening to Mary and Jane for 15 minutes, and General Mills was their sponsor. And I don't know whether to call this Grandma's quilt or General Mills quilt, or bedspread. But she taught me a lot, not only to knit and crochet, but how to live a wonderful life.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I understand she was from Bohemia originally? Yes. From Bohemia. That's beautiful. You have to make sure after service you come and take a look at the quilts you can't see. Is there someone else who would like to share a story? Yeah, Jan.
Quilt holder extraordinaire. So, I've done a lot of needlepoint and cross stitch in my life, but I always wanted to make a quilt because it seemed like a thing. So I made this double wedding ring quilt in honor of my mother. My mother unfortunately lost her mother when she was about 18 years old, and just because of the way things worked out, some of their personal belongings had to be auctioned off at public auction, and one of the things my mom had to watch be auctioned off was her mother's double wedding ring quilt. So it was lost to the family and never recovered, and so anyway, as an adult, I decided to piece a quilt. So this is hand cut and hand pieced and hand quilted. And the reason I brought it today is also part of my story, because I almost didn't bring it today because it's not perfect. If you look at it, it's, well, I did it, so it's obviously not well stitched, but obviously it has mistakes. About the third time I washed it, it bled. And so if you come up and look at it, you can see the red bled through into the stitching, and so it's pink now in places and blotchy. And so I almost didn't bring it because I was embarrassed at the blotches on my quilt, but that's the story of our lives. And when I look at this quilt, I used to think, well, it's not perfect anymore. But now I think it just has more color. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, Kathy's up else.
This is a very special quilt. It was pieced by my dad's great aunt in Michigan, who I never knew. And it had to have been done in the late 1800s, early 1900s, as best I can figure. And it was passed down, then it ended up with my grandparents and then with my mom. It's still folded up as a piece, not quilted yet. And then sometime in the 80s or 90s, I don't know, my mom took it down to church, and the church ladies finished the quilt. They put the border on it, they put the backing on it, and they hand quilted it. So it has a double special meaning to me.
I just came back this morning from Twinlow. We had our scrap and quilt sew thing going on, so I wanted to come back for this. But right in front of Kathy there, that quilt there is a tied quilt. Floyd has one he's leaning on here. And my grandparents were Norwegian heritage, Swedish, and the ladies all quilted together, but they didn't do the hand stitching, all of them. They did tying. And sometimes they came out to California to visit us as a child. We had this big, huge, like 10-foot square frame built, standing of the men put together, and all the ladies got around it and tied quilts together. It was like a little social time. And I brought this one today, which is also very special because these blocks were found in a thrift store. They were not put together. Somebody right after World War II had made these squares. They're called orphan blocks, never put together. So I took them, made the quilt around it, and my girlfriend was just learning how to do the top quilting. So I gave it to her for her birthday present with a book on how to top quilt. She finished it and then gave it back to me for my birthday. So these squares, someone worked on these diligently back during the war, and it's now back out in the world again.
Makes me think of the Gospel of John, I will not leave you orphaned, I will draw you to me and make a place for you, right?
And if you ever see these in a garage store, then grab those and bring them here because our quilters will love to finish someone's beautiful handiwork.
That's the work of reconciling, right? Taking orphans, bringing them into the body. Who else would like to share a story? Yeah, Patty Spoon, I'll come to you, Carol, and then to you, Mary Jane.
So Craig, can you hold up what's behind you? It's the farthest away from me, but that quilt is really not a typical quilt. It's a coverlet, and it's all hand done. And so my mom, who was not a crafty person, she started crochet when my dad was in his last stages of cancer. It kept her hands busy. So she has crocheted a beautiful tablecloth for everyone, but this was her attempt at quilting. So she made a quilt top. She put all of that cross stitch into place, and then she stuffed it away in a closet. And she goes, well, I don't know how to do the rest. And so I found it when she had cancer. And I was over there with her, and I said, oh, Mom, that's all hand quilting in there that has to be done. It was stamped with the pattern. And that is not my forte, hand quilting. And it's hard on my hands. And so I just knew I had to get that done. And she really, it was kind of in the last 3 weeks of her life. I got it all put together, seamed up so that I could start, and I put the backing on it. So I sandwiched it together, and I sat in her house with her, and she was on the couch watching me. And I wrapped myself in her love for an entire year after she passed.
So behind us here is a quilt that I made for my mom for her 80th birthday. It's called the Hearts and Hands quilt. It's sideways. And so there is a hand for everyone in my immediate family at the time, or a heart for someone that married into the family, or a heart for someone, my dad, my brother, who had passed away when I did that. So I did that for her 80th birthday, and then the following Christmas did a similar one behind Loretta for my mother-in-law. So yeah, definitely binding all of those family members together.
Mary Jane, and then I'll come to Randy.
I brought several today, that I want to show you is one that I found on my music stand that still has stuff in it that appeared one day on my music stand, and I had a suspicion where it came from, and I wasn't totally sure, but I did recognize some of the fabric. But this, I think, has the distinction of being the smallest quilt here today. Very, and I'm using it. And it's nicely quilted on the back, and it has little pockets. It came to me, it was made by Dorothy Dishman. And it came to me not too long after I took over the choir job here. And it's just always a reminder that, first, I have many reminders that I'm not in this job alone, but that I always have this quilt on my music stand, so if any of you ever wondered where it came from, that's it. It's my mother, well, I'm going to start with my old one. This is my possibly great-great-grandmother's handmade quilt that she pieced together in a covered wagon when her family moved to Sharon, Wisconsin. She has the word Sharon in there, and it was the 1900 is over there. That's when she finished it, and her initials are on it, some up there, Margaret Wolfram, and it's very fragile, so I don't display it much. I keep it kind of folded up because it's just it's all hand stitched. All those stitches she did by herself, and I can't imagine how she did it. All kinds of different fabrics, but it's been in our family for as long as I know, much longer actually. And so going down from that is my mother, and this is a prayer quilt. I'll just sort of, because the final one that was my mother's prayer quilt when she moved out of her home and I became her caregiver. Her church made and gave her this prayer quilt, which is just filled with Bible verses. And the biggest one in the center is the 23rd Psalm. And so this quilt served my mother and myself in her final years. And behind Lori and Alice and Sherry is another very special quilt that again was made, and Dorothy Dishman was a big piece of this one, that the choir, that is significant of our choir when they were invited to sing at Carnegie Hall. It has angels all over, because the song that got us there was Angels Are Making Their Rounds, and it's got choir members in the border. Just an ongoing reminder to me of how much we are always bound together and how much we mean to each other.
Somebody has to decide here.
Well, I don't have one of the quilts here because they're gone. This one here is my son's, Richard's. It was made by his biological mother, and some of you met him and some of you don't know. Anita was killed in '94. She made quilts for each of the kids when they were born, and there were 3 quilts made. This is Richard's. She made one for Candace 4 years before she was. Candace was 4 years old when Mom was killed. Anyway, each of the kids have it on their beds. That's why I texted Richard and asked if they have it, and they all sent me a photo of it. It is a connection to their mom. They have all really, really done well, and but they have that quilt, and they all asked to keep that, which is, I think, is really cool. So wherever they are in the world, they have their quilt from their mom.
I don't have the quilt with me, but Dorothy,
Okay.
I don't have a quilt with me, but Dorothy Dishman made a quilt for our first granddaughter. She's 6 months old now, and they loved it. They really do.
So she'll have that for the rest of her life.
We'll go to Catherine. Okay, that'll probably be pretty close to.
Well, I think Dorothy must be over here. Dorothy made me a quilt in 2016 when I got out of the hospital, and I came home and I had that quilt. And many of you signed that, so that was sweet.
Well, this is a little bit of a reverse. Many of you know that I have led lots of mission teams to Mexico. One of the things that we did is, Carol helped me, with the pins and the muslin. And so we would take them down and have the children at the work sites in Mexico do squares, brought them home. Carol and other ladies put them together. In fact, I think there's a couple of those quilts here at the church somewhere. But the next year, we would take the quilt back to Mexico and present it to the youngest, newest baby in the village or wherever we were. So that's bound us to others.
One more quilt story, but I had to share this one. 5 years ago, I lost my sister to breast cancer. She was a single parent of a son, and as the family was going through her things, I gathered her shirts, her flannel shirts that she had, and she probably had about 8 or so of them. And dear Dorothy, I love you. She took those flannel shirts and cut them into squares and turned it into a nice size lap quilt that I was able to give to my nephew for his 15th birthday right after he lost his mother. He has that still, and it's a prized possession. He can wrap himself in that when he needs a hug from his mom.
I tell you what, these stories preach, don't they? Right? They preach. And I want to invite you, if you did bring a quilt and you didn't share, again, after service, if you want to leave your quilt so that people can come and see them, we'd also love to get a photograph of all the quilts. So if you don't mind not picking them up really quickly, we would like to take some photos to remember this day in which we shared stories that are gospel to us, that tell us the story of Christ. Not only the work that Christ is doing in us, but the work that we are doing for Christ and allowing Christ to work through us. We have one more piece to